I've had twins. In 1939, when I was 4 years old, I had an operation to remove me tonsils. During this operation, I became aware that I was floating above a table where two doctors, one on either side of the table, were bending over and working on who I believed to be me. Both doctors were wearing voluminous light gray surgical gowns, face masks, and hair caps. The table was an off-white color about 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, and with a 3 or 4 inch flange with rounded edges. I was observing them from a height of about 20 feet and at a 45° angle from the nearer edge of the table. The doctors were at the opposite end of the table from where I was watching, and because I was small, their gowns obscured my body from me sight. From a vantage point above these doctors, my whole attention was on them, and therefore I did not look around to see what else was in the room, but I had the impression that any furniture or other people were some distance away. It was as though some sort of mist or fog had obliterated the surroundings. I did note, however, that the table had no cloth or other covering on the part that I could see. I watched these doctors for what appeared to be about 1 minute, then the whole scene faded from view. To this day, 76 years later, I can still clearly recall this experience as though it happened yesterday. In December 1999, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, which required surgery to remove 2 cancerous polyps. I was expected to leave the hospital after 10. In reality, my recovery lasted 4 weeks. My wife, Betty, was advised one night that I would not survive until the next morning, and that if she wanted to be with me when I died, she should come to the hospital as soon as possible. She came in with our neighbor, Kevin, but I was in a coma and did not know that they were there. During that night, I was floating in an area of total blackness, and I noticed that I had no body. I felt completely relaxed, with no emotion of fear or joy. I was just floating in blackness. After a short while, I became aware of a very bright light in the distance and that I was floating towards it. This light was round. I thought that I was in a tunnel, except that I could not discern any roof, walls, or floor. Everything was completely black except for the light in the distance. Then I heard a male voice speaking. This voice was absolutely clear and seemed to reverberate as though I were in a sound box. Even though the voice was not speaking to me, I understood what was being said and that the information involved me. This voice was not to me left or right. It was within me. The communication was telepathic. The voice said, "We do not want him here yet. Send him back." I immediately did a U-turn by flipping over onto what would have been my back. I went back into the blackness with the light behind me. I couldn't see it anymore. I woke up in me bed in the hospital and saw Betty and Kevin in me room. They both appeared quite puzzled because they were expecting me not to wake up and look around. I asked Betty what was the time. She told me that it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I told her to go home and get some sleep. At that time, I was unaware that I was expected to die and was puzzled why they were there at that time of night. From that moment on, I was feeling good, and whatever was causing me death completely vanished. I was discharged from hospital 2 days later. To this day, 15 years later, I clearly remember the whole sequence. It was not a dream. Dreams tend to be a bit fuzzy, and I cannot remember dreams after more than a few seconds. At first, I did not take a lot of notice of this experience. I heard Dr. Eben Alexander, an American neurosurgeon, being interviewed on television after writing a book called Proof of Haven and describing his NDE after recovering from an inoperable brain cancer. I realized that I had had a similar experience, although nowhere near as profound as his. I then bought his book and realized that the light at the end of the tunnel that I experienced was actually the gateway into heaven, and quite a common occurrence with those who have a near-death experience. He got through the gateway and was met by a beautiful girl who showed him around Heaven. All of their communication whilst he was being escorted around Heaven was via mental telepathy. Dr. Alexander was the child of 2 teenagers still at school, and he was put up for adoption and therefore did not know his biological parents. His biological parents eventually married and had 3 daughters, one of whom died when she was a young woman. Dr. Alexander eventually managed to find his biological parents, who sent him a photograph of the daughter who died. He then recognized this girl as the one who met him in Heaven. This led me to think that my experience might be more common than I thought, so I looked up near-death experience on the internet and was amazed to find that thousands of people have documented similar experiences to mine. I started telling people about my experience because I was now more confident that I would not be construed as a nutter. But the usual response I got was, "That's nice. What are you having for dinner?" So, I then only told people I thought might understand and who may perhaps benefit from my experience.